Forward TV. The world is thinking.
So if it doesn't happen here, it won't happen anywhere else.
Segues into our next question from the audience, and that's, can American Muslims influence the spread of democracy in the Middle East? And a kind of second question is, how do you explain electoral popularity of extremist groups in the Middle East? Two questions, but the first one, can American Muslims influence the spread of democracy? And that's a question you could ask a lot of politicians, non-Muslim or Muslim, and they might have difficulty.
Well, I think that they are influencing it already, and they're influencing it in a very important sense, because the new communication technologies, the internet, satellite, television, has allowed for a level of person-to-person contact between Muslims in the United States and Muslims around the world that would have been unimaginable even a decade ago. And more importantly, I think Muslims around the world, particularly in the Middle East and in the larger Arab world, are by no means isolated. They know what's going on around them. They see the lives of American Muslims, and they want it. They make it very clear that political participation, political freedom, democracy are issues that they believe will work in their societies. They believe that there's no fundamental clash between ideas of Islam and ideas of democracy. These are massive majorities that every single poll have shown that they want democracy in their own countries. They don't see that as a real problem. I think it's also important to recognize that a third of the Muslim world is already democratic. The largest Muslim country in the world, Indonesia, is a democracy. The second largest Muslim country in the world, Turkey, is a democracy. India, which is, believe it or not, the third largest Muslim country in the world, even though Muslims are a small minority of that country, democracy. Pakistan is a democracy. Malaysia is a democracy. Senegal is a democracy. Bangladesh is a democracy. So let's retire this notion that Islam and democracy can't work because a simple Google search will show that that's incorrect. In the larger sense, this idea of why is it that these sort of extremist groups in certain countries are becoming successful in certain elections. I say certain countries because it's important to note that, for instance, in Indonesia's recent election, the so-called Islamists were soundly defeated, as we saw in Pakistan's recent elections, in which the Islamist parties, despite the fact that they actually banded together to create one almost super party, did very, very poorly, didn't get above 5% of the vote. I think what you're referring to is countries like Egypt, places like Palestine, places like Lebanon, in which those groups who, despite half a century of having no avenue for political participation whatsoever, were suddenly given an opportunity to participate in the political realm, to actually run for elections, did exceedingly well. Of course they did exceeding. Who was surprised by this? I want to find the person who was surprised that Hamas did well in the 2006 elections in Palestine, or that the Muslim Brotherhood, which has been feeding and clothing poor people for half a century in Egypt, which has built schools and hospitals, and has provided educational grants for Egyptians to go abroad and study. Who thought that when they were first allowed to run for office that they weren't going to do well? Who thought this? This has nothing to do with what we would consider to be extremism. It has to do with the universal law of politics. He who cleans the streets gets the votes. The end.
Reminder to our radio audience, you're listening to the Commonwealth Club of California radio program. We're talking with Reza Aslan about Islamic identity in America. You talk about Egypt and North Africa in your book, No God But God. You begin by recounting this train trip you took to, I believe it's Marrakesh, right? And I won't go into too many details, but needless to say, it was the middle of the night, and there was a commotion next door. An American couple was being essentially told, stop what you're doing, by the conductor. And you had never heard such screaming, if I can put it that way, in your life, certainly on a train. And it was shocking to realize that this American couple were evangelizers on their way to southern Morocco to sort of preach the gospel. And you were kind of caught in between, on the one hand, this angry conductor, and on the other hand, this seemingly sweet American couple who was actually evangelizing and doing who knows what in the cabin. I mean, it was unclear. Yes. It was unclear what was happening there, which is why it was a really great introduction, by the way. I mean, there's no surprise your book is a bestseller. I mean, it's not just because of the introduction, but you've been a first-hand witness to this idea, this perception that there is this kind of clash of cultures, civilizations, as it were. And a lot of people, you included, say there is no such clash. But can you talk about this idea that there is the perception of one, and that in a way this colors the perception of Muslims in America?
Well, I reject the term clash of civilizations because I don't think it makes any sense, especially because there is no such thing as Islamic civilization. It's a made-up phrase. It has no definition. I mean, what does it mean? What does Islamic civilization, what are you talking about when you say Islamic civilization? Are you talking about the Arab world, which is, I guess, where Islam came from, but Arabs make up about 10% of the world's 1.5 billion Muslims. Are you talking about Persian civilization? I mean, as an Iranian, I'd like to think that that's what you're talking about, but probably not. Are you talking about Turkish civilization? Are you talking about Mongol civilization? What are you talking about? What you're talking about is Islam. That's what you're talking about. You're not making a civilizational argument. You're making a religious argument. And certainly when you say Western civilization, you are referencing Christian civilization, despite the fact that Christianity is a Middle Eastern religion. But I think what I prefer is the notion of a clash of monotheisms, because that's really what we're referring to here. These three great monotheistic faiths, Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, are almost by definition absolutist. I mean, it's only natural, I suppose, that if you believe there's only one God, that you believe that there's only one path to that God, and that all of the paths are incorrect. And so you have always had this problem of a clash between these three great faiths. What we're seeing nowadays, I think, with globalization increasingly erasing the national borders that divide us into nation states, as identities are becoming much more transnational. And in fact, as people are beginning to revert to more tribal forms of identity, ethnicity, religion, kinship. And what's happening, I think, is that the separation, the wall between religion and politics, between the secular and the profane, this is sort of the principal ideology of the 20th century. That wall is beginning to crumble. Religion and politics are very much being spoken of in the exact same language. They're using the same metaphors. And as a result, our wars are becoming less politicized and becoming more religionized, if you will. This is sort of the subject of How to Win a Cosmic War, is what happens, when people are beginning to identify themselves primarily in religious terms. What happens when we go to war? Well, those wars become religious wars. The problem with religious wars is they don't end. When what's at stake is your very identity, you cannot surrender. You cannot compromise in that kind of conflict. And that's exactly what we are facing now in the 21st century. So really the problem here is with trying to figure out a way not just to strip these conflicts of their religious connotations, but to create a sense of spirituality that is less absolutist, is more pluralistic, more recognition of the value of the other. And that, I think, is, and perhaps has always been, the principal challenge of the human race.